Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. I am your host, Sean Hayes, here to bring you the latest and greatest geeky news of the week. This is episode 292. So, rapidly approaching episode 300. And, yeah. So, bit of a light news week. Despite the fact that BlizzCon is currently happening this weekend. Not really a lot of stuff out of BlizzCon, at least based on the opening keynote presentation. But yeah, so it might be a little bit of a shorter episode today, but we'll get through everything. It's fine. So hope everyone's been doing well. For those who are keeping tally, this is now being multi-streamed to Twitch and YouTube, as Twitch now allows that for affiliates. And for those who are audio listeners, number one, thank you for listening. And number two, you don't have to worry about that at all. So, although so as a heads up, I am looking at changing the hosting provider for the various podcasts. So, Berkshire Bites, Tales of Jamora, this podcast, to move to basically a free hosting plan, to save me about $30 a month, in hosting fees. So, I don't expect there to be any hiccups, or any losses of episodes, but just so that folks are aware, in case something does go wrong. I'll be looking at doing that fairly soon. But again, I don't anticipate any hiccups in delivery. Of course, the only podcast that's currently still going at the moment is this one. So just want to make sure, and I'll be making sure that everything goes as smoothly as can be. I'll probably do Berkshire Bites as a test run first, since if something goes wrong, not as big of a deal. Since there's only a few episodes out for that. So yeah. And would likely be looking at moving things to Acast. I've heard some good things about that. And some bigger podcasts that I follow use it for their hosting. And so that's always a good sign when very successful podcasts are using a particular hosting provider. And they seem to have a good philosophy for their company, which is to just get people to podcast, and work on growing their audiences and then worrying about, making money later. So, and I appreciate that. So, yeah, why don't we get right into this week's news? And I remembered to put the logo up first this time, so I didn't spoil the news topics already. But yeah, so first up, BlizzCon, Blizzard's annual convention, returned this year. So they had the keynote presentation yesterday. It was not. There wasn't actually a whole lot in there. So things included, they started with Overwatch, which was a bold choice. And they talked about there's a new hero for Overwatch, Mauga, who is intended to be a Samoan hero. He's a tank character, dual wields miniguns, but also has like charging, like charging forward abilities. But otherwise, like that was kind of it for the announcement. Like the rest of it wasn't really anything of note. So, and that's kind of going to be the theme for a lot of the games. After Overwatch, they went to Diablo. So Diablo 4, they're talking about some quality of life improvements, like stash filtering, and they did announce an expansion that basically follows Mephisto's story and going into the jungle. They did mention there's going to be a new class that's never before been in Diablo. They didn't mention what it was, which you would think like now would be the time to do it, right? Now would be the time to announce it. Didn't. Then they moved to so notably nothing for StarCraft, nothing for Heroes of the Storm. I know there was some speculation that maybe there was going to be like a Heroes of the Storm announcement. Nothing for Heroes. Oh, they did get Phil Spencer out on stage and talk. But both Mike Ibarra and Phil Spencer's sort of opening statements are very corporate. So again, it was not super exciting right from the get-go. Although at the very least, like the folks that they brought out to talk about the individual games, seemed like they had a much better energy to them, and it's just like they had a difficult job of trying to get people excited about, stuff that ultimately not very exciting or very limited information. And so for the most part, like I kind of felt bad. So then shifted gears to Warcraft, put sort of like Warcraft as an IP, because they started with Hearthstone, and then announced the next expansion that supposedly was already announced, or like people already knew it was coming. So I got not really new information. But they did announce the name of this is terrible. Catch up packs. So it's intended for like players who haven't played in a long time coming back to the game, and it's basically just sort of like a returning, like here's cards that you might need to jump back in the game. But the fact that they're calling them catch up packs, like I don't know. I don't know if it's intentionally supposed to, sound like a pun of like ketchup packets or something, but and yeah, the next expansion gonna be Western themed. They didn't really provide any information on new mechanics or anything. And yeah. The presenter seemed very nice. It just did not like I don't know. Ben Brode's a hard act to follow for the Hearthstone team. And I feel like I don't know, between like the level of charisma that Brode had, and I know he's been out for a while, but like it seems like a lot of the teams are kind of lacking that sort of charisma for making announcement, having a stage presence. And when that's combined with the fact that you're not really announcing anything new or anything super exciting, yeah, it just felt drawn out. And they had them stay on stage for a while too. So yeah. Then they went to Warcraft Rumble, which is the mobile game they announced a few years back. This is just like like a full release announcement. Again, didn't really talk about the mechanics of the game or anything, just kind of showed off a bunch of cinematics and talking about like the ideas behind the game, but not actually like how it plays. or concerns about what is the monetization strategy. Apparently, it's very aggressive. So, yeah, which is like the art style is really great, but if I don't know if the gameplay's there to back it up. I just know apparently like it's been sort of in like a beta access for a while. So people have played it and have reported, yeah, it's like it's okay, but it has a very aggressive microtransaction strategy, and like progression feels terrible. So that's not great to hear. And then they saved Warcraft for last. The actual World of Warcraft. And this one, like, they got Chris Metzen out. And like the tone in the audience like changed immediately from being like nearly falling asleep. I mean, there were times in like the Hearthstone segment where like the crowd was just silent, and it was like, this is uncomfortable. But like Metzen came out, and then it was like everybody woke up. And so talking about doing a multi-expansion story arc, I saw, on the feed that I was watching, there was some concern in the chat of whether that means they will actually be full expansions, or if now like major patches will just be deemed like expansions that you have to pay for. But the idea being that the next 3 expansions at least will go over one story arc instead of like having self-contained story arcs to each expansion. And so it's going to focus on sort of the deep reaches of Azeroth itself, and Azeroth as a Titan, which has sort of been this idea that they've been playing with, of the idea of like world souls and as like nascent Titans. So the next 3 expansions are going to be the War Within, which means we're going to go deep down into the bowels of the planet, and fight like Nerubians, and other old god menaces. Midnight, which is sort of a void invasion, and feature a lot of the different factions of elves coming together. And then the last Titan, which is sort of going into like what have the Titans been up to. And it's heavily implied like that Azeroth might be the last Titan. So yeah, including in that a lot of quality of life adjustments coming. It's confirmed dynamic flying will now be applied to all flying mounts. And for people who have alternate characters, having a lot of your progression be tied to your account as opposed to your character, so that you don't have to grind like reputation on every character anymore. Transmog will now be account wide, or I think it already is account wide, but it will now be, as long as you've unlocked an outfit, you will be able to wear on any character, regardless of armor proficiency or weapon proficiency, it seems. And sounds like they're going to do something with time walking, of basically having time walking work more like Torghast, or like a roguelite experience. And the rewards for that will now be like transmogs and cosmetic items and stuff, to make it more exciting, and to get people to experience past content, and not necessarily in the way it was intended, as opposed to going back and just like completely steamrolling your way through it to get like a chance at a low drop of some sort of piece of gear. So yeah, ultimately, yeah, not a lot of exciting stuff out of BlizzCon, but 3 WoW expansions announced. Um and a Diablo expansion. Uh but yeah, ultimately I don't know if they're still kind of trying to find their footing. Uh oh, and they did have an opening cinematic for The War Within. Looked great, very emotional cinematic. And it kind of had like a bit of a metaphorical message for like Blizzard itself. Um so yeah. Uh we'll see if maybe, next year if they do BlizzCon again, if they kind of find their footing and, you know. Also, notably, no talk whatsoever on the unannounced or the announced but yet unnamed survival game. Like just nothing about it. So, I think uh yeah. Yeah, there's still like nobody knows anything about it. So like having something, even just like a statement or whatever, uh cuz now it kind of feels in the same vein of like Metroid Prime 4 of like, oh, there was an announcement and then just radio silence, or Elder Scrolls 6 of it being announced what seems like eons ago and just nothing. So, yeah, here's hoping in future years that maybe things are a little more exciting. Because like if you have a big event like that, you want to have exciting stuff to talk about, and it kind of felt a bit lackluster. So, next up, Bloomberg, Game Informer, and IGN report that the Destiny and Halo developer Bungie has laid off roughly 100 employees. This comes just 15 months after PlayStation acquired the studio. CEO Pete Parsons told staff that the layoffs were due to Destiny 2's underperformance in sales. The sales of Destiny 2 are apparently 45% below projections. And that's including like current sales as well as like pre-orders of whatever the upcoming expansion is. So yeah, that hit hard. uh and so again, this feels a bit different than sort of the normal course of like folks getting laid off. Um and it's like the latest in a series of developer layoffs as larger studios like purchase, or larger publishers purchase these development studios. um so we'll see, hopefully things turn around, maybe that they come out with a new IP, or that they can figure out how to course correct for Destiny. But I also don't know if it's just that their projections were overblown. Um because that's also a thing, is like something can sell absurdly well, but if you over projected it, uh instead of it being viewed as, oh, it's sold all these copies and it's like a major success, it's now like, well, it didn't sell as many copies as we thought it would, so therefore it's a failure. um yeah, tough spot. Next up, Game Informer reports that Greg Street, known as Ghost Crawler for Warcraft, longtime Warcraft fans, and NetEase Games have announced a new studio called Fantastic Pixel Castle. This studio is developing a new AAA MMO codenamed Ghost, which that I'm going to get into why that's a funny code name for that. With a founding team that's composed of talent from World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Guild Wars 2, Fortnite, Overwatch, and Valorant. The studio has committed to a fully remote strategy, so they're not mandating any sort of office work. I don't even know if they have a physical office, or if it's just everybody working remotely. like from wherever they want to. Um, and collecting community feedback like early and often, like almost a fully transparent process, and like soliciting feedback at almost every step of the way. There is a live stream AMA set for 2 p.m. Eastern Time on November 8th. I don't have the link for that, ironically. Um, I'm not sure if it was in that article. But, you know, to answer, just any thoughts people have about the project. All we know is that the code name is Ghost. There's been a couple pieces of like concept art revealed for it, so fantasy RPG. Uh, but yeah, it being codenamed Ghost is funny, especially like if there's a bunch of Blizzard people involved. Uh, from the uh, legendary, never released StarCraft Ghost that was supposed to come out for the N64. Yeah, the first person, I believe it was first person shooter that was supposed to be on the N64. Uh, it just never happened. So I just think that's kind of funny, just from a bit of video game history perspective of hopefully this does not suffer the same fate. Um, but also like it seems pretty ambitious, like, and in this day and age, to develop a AAA MMO. So, I mean, it seems like they've got a lot of industry veterans working on it. I say a lot, but like they also called out that they're specifically keeping their development team small so that they can quickly pivot. Um, so yeah, yeah, we'll have to see what's going on with this. Uh, so yeah. Now I'm not sure. NetEase sounds familiar. I'm not sure if that's a Chinese publisher. I think I might be getting them mixed up with Tencent. Um, but or I'm trying to think of who the Korean publisher is. That they've made a bunch of. I can't remember any of the, like, I've played a bunch of games made by that publisher. Um, Geez, I just can't remember. Right, or Nexon, that's who it is. Yeah, the problem. So many of these MMO publishers have very similar names. Um, but yeah, yeah, we'll have to see. Also, Fantastic Pixel Castle. I don't know. That's a kind of a weird developer studio name, but so we'll see how development on that goes. Um, I know I have seen uh Greg Street tweet like a bunch of like his thoughts on this process going forward, and like like it's kind of a scary prospect of like soliciting feedback kind of as you go in the development cycle, and like being very open with communication. um but it also seems like that's kind of in his wheelhouse, because that was sort of his claim to fame when he was uh working on the Warcraft team, was that he was often in the forums and like communicating and being very open uh with the community on what was going on development wise. So next up, Polygon reports that Monty Cook's cipher-based TTRPG Invisible Sun is being reprinted. So there is a crowdfund campaign on BackerKit right now. The campaign is currently live, finishing on the 17th of November. It will include a So there is a box set that includes 4 hardcover books, about 1,000 cards with unique spells, items, incantations. There are physical components that are like you must use those to like keep track of stuff on your character sheet. A GM notebook, some maps, an art book. And this is a campaign setting that kind of does like a multiversal kind of thing where it's intended for like any sort of character concept to be viable. A lot of the art had sort of a magic punk feel to it of like flying airships and stuff, but like just a very wide variety of character archetypes. So is a bit pricey, and it looks like they just keep doing limited runs of this game, and it kind of feels like there's just a lot to it. So it comes with access to, I forget the name of it, but it's basically like supplemental. I don't know if it's software or a website or something that is designed to help get people up to speed to play the game, which, in my opinion, I know Monty Cook is a very accomplished designer. I feel like if you need some sort of outside assistance to get caught up to speed with a game, that is a criticism to be made against the game. And it just feels like there's just so much, like, because it's like over 200 physical pieces of like tokens and markers and counters and things. Like it almost feels like you have to bring a backpack full of stuff to run a session of this game. And that seems very intimidating. So I don't know. If any folks out there have played this game, let me know. I'm very curious because like I know the cipher system is very widely highly regarded. But it almost feels like, I don't know if this is intended, if Invisible Sun is intended to be like cipher system hard mode, like cipher advanced, or if it's intended for just people who like to fidget with little physical components. I don't know. Like it just from a business perspective, which I mean, obviously, if you're an artist, make what you want to make. But like from a business perspective, it seems weird to make a game that would have a high production cost due to all of these like unique physical components to it. So, but yeah, that is currently live, finishing up in about 2 weeks from time of this recording. So if this is your jam, get in on it. And our last bit of news for the week, The Verge reports that Twitch is ending its support for the Nintendo Switch app. Because remember, Twitch actually has an app for the Switch. It will be removed on the 6th from the eShop. So just a few days after recording of this episode, it's going to be pulled from the eShop. Those who have downloaded it will lose access to it at the end of January 2024. Now, the reason why folks might have forgotten about this, so the app, so it allows you to watch Twitch streams. Does not allow you to view chat. Does not allow you to like subscribe, like to become a sub and support the creators. Doesn't allow you to broadcast your own gameplay. So like you can't use it to stream your own games, which is something that it does do on PlayStation and Xbox, I believe. I know it does on PlayStation because it has like that built-in functionality. But yeah, I don't know if those were restrictions imposed by Nintendo, or if like some of them were imposed by Nintendo and like the subscription thing was Nintendo would want to cut and Twitch, was like no. But yeah, so that'll that's being pulled, and you will lose access to it at the end of January if anybody was actually using it. It just because like in order to get the full experience, you'd have to be using a second device anyway. At which point, you're probably just gonna watch it on that device. So yeah, just weird. Yeah. So shocker, apps that probably don't get that much of an audience are support's being ended for it. So not at all very surprising. I kind of forgot that it was a thing, and I'm surprised that it lasted this long. So yeah. That is going to wrap up our news for this week. So if you would like to see more stuff from 8-Bit Adventures, you can go over to 8bitadventures.com. And if you want to help support that content, which includes comics, podcasts, streams, artwork, a little bit of game development type stuff, you can become a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And just want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of the current patrons. Thank you for your continued support. And finally, the opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his stuff over professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. All of these links will be in either the video description or the podcast notes in your podcast app for this episode. And that wraps it up. So thank you all for joining me. Hope you all have a great week. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.